afternoon, everybody, and welcome to your newest episode of Out of the Vault. If you need to catch up, remember, you can always click on the playlist provided below. Today we're going to take a look at a very interesting Disney classic. It came out in the year 2000, and it was the 40th classic in the library. It is the laugh out loud buddy comedy, The Emperor's New Groove. Now, this was a very interesting movie because this is basically when the Disney Renaissance came to an end. But there were a lot of Disney classics that were still being cranked out. However, they were interesting because Disney was starting to think outside of the box and giving us very different stories from the typical Disney princess and fairy tale story. So The Emperor's New Groove is a story that takes place in South America with an emperor named Kuzco. Here's the first interesting thing. Kuzco's not really liked by many people because he's just a spoiled little brat who just wants everything for himself. His newest venture is to make a summer home where a little village is, and the leader of the village, who goes by the name of Pacha, is told that he has to clear out his village to make room for his pool house. But at the same time, he also has an advisor named Yzma, and she's recently fired. And because of the fact that she was let go, she takes her good sidekick, Kronk, to try and kill him. But instead, they make a little mistake and turn Kuzco into a llama, and he ends up getting thrown out of the village secretly, and then he ends up finding Pacha, and then Pacha and Kuzco have to make their way back to the palace to turn Kuzco back. But the question is going to be, will Kuzco still be that spoiled brat, or will something actually change in him? Now, I remember going to see this movie, and I really remembered laughing a lot, so it was very interesting to actually dust this off and watch it again for the second time in my life. What was very funny about this movie is the voice cast. I mean, the two heroes are played by David Spade and John Goodman. Who would ever think that there would come a day where David Spade would be associated with Disney? Mike Myers, Adam Sandler, Dana Carvey, none of these great comedians are even close to being connected with the Disney world, and yet we have David Spade voicing Kuzco. But you know something? He was the perfect choice to play a spoiled brat. John Goodman did a great job as Pacha. It was so great to see him there because Disney ended up using him for a lot of other characters, and I think you all know a very popular one. But what really shines in this movie is the villains, because this is also the very first time where the villain is not necessarily scary. The villain is just as funny as the hero, if not funnier. Eartha Kitt and Kronk, played by the great Patrick Warburton, were just ingenious together. Every single time they are on screen, I was laughing my head off, and I just loved the fact that this was the very first Disney classic that was literally making fun of itself. This movie was never meant to be serious in the first place, and they did such a great job letting the whole Disney fan faithful out there know about that. Truthfully, if they would have actually used this kind of comedy in the Hercules film, I think that Hercules would have been the perfect Disney classic, because the story itself in The Emperor's New Groove is nothing special. I mean, when Yzma and Kronk are not on screen, you don't laugh as much, and you get a little bit bored because some of the moments that take place with Kuzco and Pacha are not really fun to watch, and they get kind of boring after a while. I mean, they try to be funny, but compared to the villains, they are not that funny at all. It was also very admirable for Disney to give their take on a buddy comedy, because Pacha and Kuzco did work well off of each other. They just didn't have the magic of the villains. I'm glad that I watched this movie, because now I know that that whole thing that I felt when I went to see that movie back in 2000 was pretty much a fluke. I do recommend that you should see this classic at least once. Maybe you'll like it more than I do. I will not deny the fact that this movie is very, very funny, but it's just not a movie that I would see myself watching over and over again, because when I'm not laughing, I'm kind of snoozing. So The Emperor's New Groove is going to get 2 out of 4 from me. But thank you very much for watching as always, guys, and please let me know what you thought about The Emperor's New Groove, and I'll see you next time when I review yet another Disney classic. Actions speak louder than words.